set up, it was the rookie show. You know, when you're setting up a stand in the summertime and you're like, yeah, that looks good. And then you're like, oh, don't forget a ratchet strap. Don't forget the last ladder rung. I had to switch stuff around. It took me over an hour to get set up on a stand that was already hung. But I'm finally in. If you have been keeping tabs this season, specifically in northeastern Wisconsin, it is super dry. I haven't mowed my lawn in like a month. A couple years ago, well, probably 5 years ago, I killed a buck out here. And I had no idea this spot existed. But this is where my deer ended up dying, right on this watering hole. So as far as I know, this is the nearest water source for a lot of critters. All summer long, getting pictures of deer hanging out in it. Some really big ones too. But the big ones have seemed to have vacated it for now. It's early October. We had a big cold front sweep through a couple days ago, and it's still chilly. I don't really know where the deer come from in this spot, so it could be a complete bust. Obviously, I don't want my wind blowing over the watering hole because that's where I plan on taking them out, so my wind's kind of blowing back off towards my right shoulder. And since right now there isn't a buck on the property, that could always change. First available doe on the board might get it. Now, as I said before, with this tree stand, I thought I had a lot of cover. Now I'm up here and I feel like I am way too close to this thing. So although I want to get some cool footage of the deer in the water, I might not let them make it there. Alright. It's getting fairly late because it took me so long, so let's settle in and hopefully let an arrow fly. Had that smaller doe in the watering hole. I thought I could hear deer coming. Big doe, it looked like a fawn behind it. My wind is blowing right to him. I feel like the wind is swirling out here. It was supposed to be steady from 10 to 15, but what are you gonna do? good to let an arrow fly. She was quartering pretty hard, probably about 30 yards. I wish I was a little bit more forward. I did not look at the footage yet. It's getting dark here, so I wanted to do this interview. The wind is swirling in this entire watering hole area. That was like the 5th or 6th deer that I've seen. Had some wind me behind me, and they came in leery, definitely leery. You could see on the video where she was kind of sticking her nose up in the air, and I could feel the wind in my back. So I don't know if it was going over the top of her, but she was definitely cautious. And I saw her run off to the west, sorry, to the east. I did not see her crash right away. So I don't think I double lunged her. Like I said, I was back. You heard the thump, you didn't hear a crack. I don't think she jumped the string, so I think I'm good in terms of up and down. But she just stood there, probably 150 yards out, and I could see my knock. Stood there, stood there, stood there. Then she started crashing a little bit. Looked like she was potentially dying. The problem is, I gotta go that way to get out of here. So I'm gonna have to find a different way out. Alright. Man, it's been a while since I let one fly on a doe. They stuck around a little bit too long. Alright. Obviously, after getting home and watching the footage, I realized the shot was further back than I thought. I knew it was back, just based off the sound. So we're back here at the tree the next morning. I don't expect to find a lot of blood without an exit injury and the entrance being where it's at. Just don't see finding a lot of blood, so I crawled back up to the tree. I got a general location on where I last saw her. I really believe she did not go far after that unless she was bumped by something. So I can't find any blood. And I've got this big tree here that I kind of marked her behind. Maybe about 100 yards away from the stand. A little slashing thicket that I could see my knock kind of floating through. So I dropped the pack on the trail, couldn't find a drop of blood. And I just started my track on my phone to do some grid search because I really felt like she was in this area. And here she is. Alright, I dropped my pack about 30 yards that way. I'll grab that. It's still really cold out here, so I'm not worried about her going bad. But get her cleaned up. Do a little chatting. Alright. It's always nice to have a successful hunt. It's windy out here, so hopefully you can hear me. But 6 years ago I shot a buck about 150 yards to the east, and he ended up dying right next to his watering hole. So this summer I had put a camera there and had tons of deer. The power of a watering hole, especially during this dry fall, and this has been going back into the spring, it's been dry for 6 months. So deer have been hitting this pretty hard. If you can find a water source, anytime, deer are gonna find it. But if you can find a water source when it's specifically dry, those deer are going to flock to it. And there's tons of sign around it right now. I haven't had any big bucks on this source since probably September. So I was comfortable coming in here and trying to get after a doe. Oh, it's been a while since I've had venison at my feet and whiskey on my lips in October. And man, it feels good to be on the board. As I said before, it's been a while since I've flung an arrow at a doe. I've passed up a lot of deer and I've made some mistakes. So it's always good when you have a little bit of success. So until next time, we'll see you out in the woods. It's only getting started here. The next month is going to be a blast. That one burned a little bit.